you very much. What I want to do today is talk a bit about DNN performance and how you can maximize the performance of your DNN installation, especially if you want to create a production environment. There's a lot of things that can be done in DNN itself. Let me put it a better way. The default installation of DNN is not optimal for production performance. I think that's a better way. Things have improved over time, but still, if you're working with version 7, 7 or 6 or 7.2.1 or 7.2.2, things are not optimal. And I'm not talking about database construct. There's Sebastian who knows a lot about it. I will talk a bit about his options to improve performance. The small things I'm going to talk about are just environmental. Installation settings of DNN itself, things about SQL Server and things about IS that would help you to build a better performance. Some small background. I have a company called xCess, probably most of the people know here. We exist for 15 years, we are about 25-30 people working. We are a DNN Gold partner and I'm an MVP since 2 years. I started with DNN in 2003 with version 1 point something. But at some point in time, Erik van Ballegooy convinced me that I should improve the events module. So I picked it up in 2007. I did something together with Thorsten about FAQ module. I'm not finished yet. I had a problem with the DNN reports module, something at the end of last year, so I picked it up as well, converted it to C# and it's ready for a new version. So I'm in DNN for a longer term. My objectives for this particular session is share some of the experience that we have. And one of my colleagues is sitting in the back, Martin, who knows a lot about performance for bigger clients as well. So if you have any questions, you can address them as well. What I want to do here is talk a little bit about administrators, hosts, and developers, skinners. And if the people here are not developers, but in one of the other categories as well, I hope you will learn something about that. Your benefit, I hope that you really, at the end, remember at least 2 things that you will change for your production DNN. Maybe you know everything which I'm going to talk about, that's good, because then you're running your DNN installation at maximum production performance. But I hope you will learn something in between now and let's say 40-45 minutes. A little bit about the environment, a little bit about measuring performance, how do you measure performance and why is it important. How can you improve DNN performance without programming, just by setting the admin and host environment. How can you improve the web server performance, and what can you do about database performance? I'm not talking about database changes for tables and indexing. I'm just talking about what can you do with the installation of SQL Server to make your system run better. Just some elements in there. What I'm not going to talk about is how to improve .NET performance, so programming. There's another area for that. I'm not going to talk about the internet connection. Here, depending on what the client sees, is what your internet connection is in the end. In the Netherlands, internet connection for most companies and people is very good. So that influences the idea of performance by the client, by the user. But still, there are other elements you can do to improve the stuff. Okay. Why and how, what do you want to improve performance? Any answers?
Page speed.
Sorry?
Page speed.
Page speed? Yeah. And why?
Is it too much loading? Client rules.
Okay. Client expectancy, the user visiting. Of course, that's an important question. But there are more elements to it, and most notably, search engine optimization. Most search engines give you a penalty if your website loads slowly. So that's nothing to do with the user, but if you want to be in the first 10 lines of Google search results, website performance is an element in there as well. How can you measure performance? Well, there are different aspects of measuring performance. Right, just a technical interpretation. If you want to make your website optimal, that means that the content as such is optimal. It's a nice way of talking about performance. And the second way of talking about performance is the speed at which web pages are serviced to the end user, which is a form of performance as well. I'm not talking about functional performance, how well does it do its job, it's all about technique. Why? No, first mention you did user experience. If your website is slow, they move away. If you make web applications and it's slow, you get angry users because they cannot do their work. And Martin has some nice experience over the past months for users complaining about web pages that didn't load in 60 seconds. Of course it was not from one day to the other day 60 seconds, but it took about 4 months of filling content that the pages start decreasing from 2 seconds to 60 seconds. We solved that, luckily enough. Nothing to do with DNN itself. Well, it has to do with the red hat, but that's something different. Second most important thing is search engine optimization. If your website loads slowly, you will get a penalty from DNN, from Google, not from DNN. There's several ways of measuring performance. You can do it offline, and with offline I mean you install an add-on in your Firefox, and the add-on, for example, is vari slow or page speed for Google Chrome, and that will give you the figures. What I mostly like to do is measuring performance online, which is a nice tool because it measures really the online performance, how things work. Nice way of getting ideas how fast your website, your web pages are.
Sorry, will we be able to get this presentation when you're done?
Sorry?
Will we be able to get this presentation?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Claudio, well, it's not here. Claudio is gathering all the presentations. I have a list of items at the end that you can visit to find something. I also have a complex project that has all the information that I'm showing here available as complex project. You mentioned it, dnnperformance.complex.com. That even includes, I think, this presentation, but Claudio is sampling and gathering the presentation, probably going to make that available on dnnconnect.org. Before moving into performance, let's see how other people do their job. So looking at some examples. And I started, I think 1 or 2 years back, I did the same type of presentation in America during DNN World. I started with the examples that were available at .netnuke.com at that time, and nowadays at dnnsoftware.com. Please note, it was a large audience of DNN people. The fact that a particular page speed has a very low figure, so it's a slow page, doesn't mean that it's a bad website. In order to prevent liability and claims from American people on me discussing something about their projects. And that's no means an opinion about the quality of the sites that I give as an example here. Okay, showcase, this is the link you will find. Not some examples, then for government.org, and what you see here, if you do it online, 2 types of speed measurements. It measures the speed for mobile and it measures the speed for desktop. I think that has been implemented about half a year back, where desktop is the first and most important figure that they're going to show in the first place. But if you want to, you can click on desktop and you will see another figure. So 100% would mean perfect. Anything lower than 80 is not good. Well, at the end, I will advise you try to get at a figure of 80 or more. That's a good page speed. You cannot reach the 100% because DNN has some elements in there that doesn't work to get at 100%. If you make a plain HTML page completely WW3 compliant, it will reach the size of 100, but for normal CMSs it's not reachable. Okay, some other desktop?
Hello World, right?
Hello World, yes. Okay, and some other figures I found here, Government of Australia, also samples from the DNN website, 52 for a desktop, 41 for a mobile. You see most of the websites are not very well on mobile yet, but I think things will change over time. You can do better. DNN can do better. I've taken some examples here. Let me put some figures upstairs here. Sports Direct from Canteras in the UK does a very good job. It has a figure of 94 out of 100. And why slow? That's another figure that has something with loading from files is 66, which is great as well. DNNconnect.org is good as well, it's 81% and 72% for why slow, so 81 is really a good figure if you don't do anything special. And from the xCess website, 92% for the 92 out of 100 and 69 for the why slow environment. Something you can do about, but something you can't do about. I think at some point in time, in the previous version of DNN, we got the 96 or 97%, but Martin knows better than I do. But these figures, 94, above 90 is really great if you have DNN website. I also look at the competition because people say WordPress is much better and Braco is much better than DNN. So I really looked at the same type of principles from Braco, which is also a .NET environment. Well, you see here 56%, 75 out of 100, 83 is good, 75, 81 is good. So it's a good technical website, and 66% is not bad at all. Also looked at Joomla. Some examples over there. They are bad ones, 43, so people say Joomla is always faster. It's not. You can do bad things with Joomla as well. But there are also good ones, like this one. I think the combination is the highest, 90 out of 100, which is very good. And also 81 on the Wise environment. Barnes and Noble, a big book-selling organization in the US. Really, sorry?
They spend a lot of money on this.
Yeah, they spend a lot of money. It is really very good. Above 90 and above 80% for the Wise Slow. This is the Google PageSpeed figure, and this is the Wise Slow. Some difference in there. Google PageSpeed is general impression, if I mention it, and the Wise Slow does more a breakdown of all the different elements on the page, and figures out how quick those different elements load and give you a figure about that. So, anybody willing to share his website URL? I can type it in here, or the website of a competitor, which is also nice.
www.
Let me first get to PageSpeed. PageSpeed. I think I have it somewhere here. And measuring a performance like this has nothing to do with the internet connection, because Google does the page speed measurement for you. So even if the internet connection here is not that fast, it doesn't perform a problem because Google is performing this particular check.
N-A-T-R-E-A-D-1.
N-A-T-R-N-A-D. G.
Ready RE81. But CO.ZA.
No, 81.
ZA.
Sorry. ZA. Ah, sorry.
CO.
So, yes, sorry. Okay.
That's it.
That's correct. Net ready at South Africa.
It's going to scare the crap out of me.
The nice thing after this session, you will know what you can change to make it better. I'm for sure that you will learn some of the things. Well, 66 out of 100 for a mobile is not that bad. 78. Well, reasonable. I think you can do a little bit better. My goal at the end will be that you can reach anything above 80. 80 is fine. The more you will find, the more you want to achieve to the 90 or the 100, the more time it will cost you, and mostly sometimes more money, because you do more things about it.
Which version is version 6 point something?
Okay. So that's not bad. I've seen worse examples which I've shown before. Okay. Just to give you an idea. Just give it a try. In this case, it only measures the home page, which is the first page most people come by. So it will be useful to measure some different pages to get an idea if your website is performing on different levels as well. The same. Yes, we can. We can do better, and that's not by buying more hardware or adding some more, but I hope changing some of the settings within DNN, and I'll teach you about that. My aim is to do anything above 80, and 80 means that if you do the page speed, and I showed our way of doing page speed, that is GT metrics, which I like. Anything here that will go above 82%. And then I come back to my browser. This one. I'm now going to the website, because this GT metrics, which I've put here as a link for myself, produces this figure automatically. It's a free service. You can build up some history behind it if you log in and register yourself. My screen is a little bit better than what you see here, but you get the impression. It is giving you some advice at the bottom, the things you can do. So 86 page speed, something different from the online for Google page speed. I said it's really not bad, very good. So my objective is always be above 80, 85 here if you have the possibility to do so. Okay. How can you reach that? I talk about the number of settings that you can change, and maybe you know them, but just a reminder what things you can improve in there. Some of the host settings that I'm going to talk about are changed in DNN 7.2.2, and are probably also changed in 7.3.
Only for new installs.
Only for new installs, correctly, Sebastian. I think some of the changes that are made for the standard installation I put forward, I think 2 years back to DNN. There's reason why they didn't implement that, I'm going to talk that. But nowadays most of the settings that I suggested to improve out-of-the-box runtime performance have been implemented in the default install for new installations, but not for old installations, correct. Settings on a host level, all things you can do about it, maybe you've done it. Site log history, event log buffer, change the schedules. Schedules out of the box for anything below 7.2.2 are not well defined for either development or production. Cut the auto-sync file system, not today, okay. Cut the auto-sync file system if you don't upload files by FTP, just forget about the auto-sync file system. Change something about caching. Do something about jQuery, content delivery network hosting, and do something about client resource management introduced in DNN 7.1, I think. Who has done something about caching? Martin, yes, I know. Yeah, of course, otherwise you wouldn't reach the nice figure of 94%. Yeah. But to show you later on how you can do that, and I have some queries in SQL that will change it for you. And also on the Codex project you will find those queries and I'll show you later on. Okay, what should you do about it? Limit the site log history and do a cleanup schedule. So there's always, let's say, a maximum of 30 or 60 days of site log, and just cut the crap behind it.
Or turn it off.
Or turn it off.
Because usually you side log you use different tools to analyze.
Okay. Okay. If you use Google Analytics, you can turn it off.
It's all part of it.
Yeah, now it is. It is. Yeah.
It simply copies. It simply loads the IIS backlog into the database, which is not really
correct.
If you use something like, for example, we use
Google Analytics.
No, what's the name? Smarter tools, smarter stats. For one website, if you only have one website, it's for free, and you get really beautiful analytics of your website.
Right.
Just install it as a website on your server. That's it.
Don't use it, limit and clean up if there is anything in there. Event log buffer it. You not really need every record to be written directly. You can do a 5 or 10 buffering. If the site runs in production, I'm talking about production environment.
And it's called frequently, because if the site goes down, you will lose the buffer.
Yeah, you can lose 2 or 3 or 4 items in there. So, but for really running production environment, I'm talking here of steadily, normally running production environment, it's no problem to leave event log buffer. Change the schedule from request-based to timer-based. That's default installation nowadays. Turn off auto-sync file system. Change caching to memory and heavy. Currently is most of the time caching out of the box is file-based. jQuery, I mostly set it for running environments to be hosted. Be aware for upgrades when there are new libraries of jQuery sometimes. The hosted queries are still pointing to old libraries. So if you want to do an upgrade, get it off hosted and be it inline jQuery library. And what we mostly do is client resource management, activate and load. Client resource management, the fact that number of CSS files are combined together in a smaller one, or number of GS files are combined into one, and you get a dedicated CSS file for that particular page, which is smaller, and it also is one request for data instead of a number of CSS files that are captured.
Versions which have issues.
Why do you suggest to change the schedule to time-based? Because this last week I've been having a conversation with Charles Morgan.
Yeah.
And his objective is that we should use request-based.
Why?
Actually, I was having some problems with the timer, and they told me that we should use the request-based. So my question is, why?
Okay, why?
I've been using timer-based for a long time.
Okay,
So
okay.
I'm not really sure why.
Okay. You know, you often know what the difference is between request-based and timer-based. Okay, the fact that if you use request-based and the site hasn't been running and put down, you don't have a ping service. When the first page is serviced, on that request, it's going to look what schedules should be run.
Yeah.
And especially if you're using the older search engine scheduler, sometimes you get a schedule that will take 13 minutes sometimes to rebuild the search index. So on that request, all schedules will start to run because the site has been down for a long time.
Is that the reason why in 7.3 they said the option you can start
Delay. Yeah. Yeah.
But sorry, you're not
Okay,
really
correct me. Correct.
The situation is, if you have request-based on every page request, it looks whether it triggers the time, the scheduler, and the scheduler looks whether there are jobs to be done.
Mhm.
Of course, if the site is down, nothing will happen because there is no engine running to look for it, even on the timer-based. If the
Yeah.
site is kicked out of the memory because you have an application pool which recycles the site after 20 minutes of inactivity, even the timer-based is unable to do something. But the timer-based means when the site is running up, there is a parallel thread going on, which is running constantly as long as the site is going and doing every minute or now I think every second. It looks whether there is some.
So if you have a ping service and your site is keeping running, the timer-based will keep itself.
They both will work on every ping. On the timer-based means the first time the site is going up, there will be a thread, a background thread, which is taking care of the schedule.
Okay.
On ping-based, it just puts a request on the scheduler service. It does what it has to do, and then it goes down. And the next ping, it will be started again. So on every ping, and if you have a lot of, if you have a heavily running site, you have lots of pings, and this might interfere with lots of starts. So usually timer-based should be more smoothly. You shouldn't have that many requests on it. And for a frequently used working site, timer-based is easy. If you have a site which is not very much used, then the request-based is a little bit. It's easier because it doesn't have this background process. It goes a little bit better in memory.
Okay.
So I'm not so sure because I got different messages from them. So that's something that.
Okay.
we really
Interesting. And I'm really interested in new schedule.
Yeah, I saw it yesterday. Yeah.
So really going to do some investigation in there. Yeah.
Can you comment on the caching in memory? What it is,
Yeah.
what consequences that has?
I'm going to skip some of them because some of them has done here, so some of the demos in here, but I'm going to talk about caching as well. And I made some queries, SQL queries to change that for you. Well, schedule, especially for the previous before 7.2 schedules were really not very well tuned to either development or production. What we always do, we have production, we have development sites which turn all schedules off, because in development we don't need schedules. And if you build your site, build your module, start your site, it will start running all the schedules in the background. So for development, just turn all the schedules off. And for production, there are some, well, previously the help indexing was a pain in, was not that well. So if out of the box, the help indexing was set every 13 minutes. That's nice during, let's say, build-up of the site, or for production environment, it's not very nice, so we always change that to one time a day, one time in 12 hours, because the indexing of the help will take a lot of resources and a lot of time. And if it's too quick, the older versions, the schedules could run after each other, the same schedule, try to catch up the previous schedule. So you will see that the help indexing will never finish, because the next indexing schedule after 30 minutes starts before the previous one has already finished.
You know the new default schedule in D7?
1 minute.
1 minute.
Yeah, but the newer help indexing is completely different, because it's search engine indexing. Search indexing is completely different because it's built on Lucene, which is a well-known help indexing machine, help indexing service. It's the new search is every 1 minute, and it's not indexing everything but it's only indexing the differential. So that makes a lot less work. The downside of that your module, if you implement the iSearchable interface, has to cope with the fact that it's not going to deliver all the keywords to be entered in the search index, but only the keywords that have changed before the previous run. So you really have to change your indexing iSearchable interface if you want to use really the new indexing service. That most of the time means for some of the modules that you have to implement create date, change date, delete date and a logical delete in order to service the new help indexing correctly. But it's correct in the new version for Racine it's set at 1 minute.
I think it doesn't, in many situations you can put that down because you're not, it speeds up on the initial build-up of the search index, but I noticed that it takes hours anyway, so it doesn't matter whether it's a little bit slower, and for production running, after some time, it doesn't, you won't have new content every minute, so
that's right.
it's totally fine if you do it every 5 minutes or 10 minutes or something like this. I noticed that any schedule done every less than 5 minutes really hurts the performance of the system.
Right.
Including messaging and so on, you don't need it per minute usually.
Of the version 6.5 here available, let me look at the default schedules that are available. And you will see, though, you're probably not going to see it a bit here, scroll down a bit. Users online, if you use it, users online every 1 minute, which is right because it only takes a couple of milliseconds to run. Per child log every day, so you get a size log size which is reasonable. Schedule history, also clean it every once a day, so you limit yourself. Log buffer, you can purge every minute if you want to, but switch it off in this case. Send log notification, we never do, we visit the sites to see what the event log is filled. Here the default is every 30 minutes, that's completely incorrect for production environment, like Sebastian told. During the build-up of the site you're making a lot of content, it's nice because every 30 minutes your content will be indexed, but after the site runs once a day is mostly enough. This is version 6.722 is new. Purge module cache every 1 minute and messaging these tags every 1 minute is fine as well because they're very tiny schedules.
Yeah, but this is, I could always think what's 1 minute to 5 minutes usually because I notice on many services that's totally fine. For example, users online means that this is purge users online means that you have a frequency.
Just a counter.
No, you have a frequency in your a time window in your host settings where you say, okay, if this user didn't show up, didn't do any activity for example for 10 minutes, then it's meant to be offline. So it will be cleaned from the users online table, and if this, whether this has been 10 minutes or 15 minutes, it doesn't really matter, so put it to 5 minutes.
For most of the case that we have, we switch it off completely, we don't count the users online. How do you change those settings? Of course you can go to the settings and go to schedules and change it yourself. But what I've done is took all those settings and put it in an SQL script. So you can run the SQL script to do the change settings for you. Or you can change the installation pack, not install it as it is, but use the zip file for the installation, visit the DNN install.config file which is inside the zip file and change the setting there, so every new install you do with the zip contains the other settings. Okay, well, where do you find those things? I'm going to talk about caching a little bit more later on. Caching, memory, heavy, server and private. Timer method for the scheduler. I think those are the autosync file system off, you don't need that anymore. This all saves time in production environment. And these are the schedules which have changed. Some have switched off and some of them are made longer. This is settings for the development environment, everything switched off. Host level settings, client resource management, we really have to do some testing, enable composite files, so files are combined to a general one. Minify CSS, minify JavaScript.
I noticed that in some versions this doesn't really properly work, so you have to uncheck that.
Right. In the default install we start with doing nothing about this, but we try it on later on because it will make the files that you service to the end user smaller and less files to be serviced.
Is it possible to disable it?
Yep.
again,
Yeah.
without any consequence?
Without a consequences, what it does, you have to increment the version and it will regenerate for every new page that is visited by client a new dedicated set CSS and JavaScript file for that particular page. And when you switch it off, it goes back to default mode, that is, it's going to load the CSS and JavaScript as defined in the program.
It should be tested in a development environment before doing that in production. Let's do that in production. Test it first in your.
Okay, what we do for module development, we minify the CSS and JavaScript in the installation pack. Yeah.
Because it can be
But if you have a page with different modules,
yeah.
and every module has its own CSS, and you have 5 modules, 5 CSS files, this would help to create one CSS file for that particular page.
I wouldn't suggest using magnifying CSS unless you control all the CSS.
Yes.
Because if one of those has an include or external CSS, it will not work at all.
Okay. Okay.
I have had a lot of
Yeah.
trouble debugging
Okay.
that kind of issues.
Great.
Sorry, have you done any testing versus hardware load balance?
No. A little bit about caching. Default install of DNN has caching set to file-based. Everything before DNN 7.2.2 was default installation caching file-based. And what does caching do? Combine some of the output of the pages and put it in a file on disk. And the next next page servicing for the same page, and it is a static page. It would retrieve this cached HTML and service that to the end user. So that's caching. Store it somewhere else where it can be quicker retrieved. And it works if you have, let's say, rather static pages that service the data in there. It is an advantage and it is a downside. The advantage, and that's probably due to the fact that they until 7.2 they all made it file-based, you need a lower server internal memory consumption because the files, the cached output is cached on disk and it doesn't take any internal memory. The downside is that's the slowest form of caching available because it's file-based, it has to write a file, retrieve the file, and memory-based is always quicker.
Have you had any figures about it?
I haven't tested it. No. Would be nice to see what the differences are. It depends on the quality of the IIS server, of course, where the files are cached. But in general, internal memory is always quicker than, let's say, file caching. But the advantage is you can have smaller IIS web servers to do your website there. So probably it's a trade-off for smaller DNN installation. If you have a cheap hosting environment with limited amount of internal memory, file caching will probably be better than internal memory caching.
7.3 they said like we can move the portal 0 to somewhere else also.
No, doesn't. No. Currently it doesn't. Yeah. It also helps essentially if you talk about IIS or SQL Server environment servers to put SSDs in there instead of normal disks or SCSI drives, and use the SSD in a RAID-based configuration, so it's safe as well. And since SSDs, solid-state disks, are really getting cheap, even for the high-quality ones, it's a good investment over the long run. Okay, I made some queries available to show you what kind of caching is there. Let me see if I can find my queries. Display cache settings. Okay. Host SQL. This is an out-of-the-box installation of DNN 6.2.9. And you see here what I start with, the host setting. In this case, portal 0, the host setting is file module caching provider, and all pages derived from this setting. And that's all file module caching provider. Would you change the caching method to memory? It will only change for new pages or for new modules. So for the existing modules, especially if you talk about, if you see here, also admin pages or admin modules, all file caching. So that is not optimal for production environment. They have done some things on DNN 722. Let me start it up as well. I put the same query in there.
So,
It's a small machine, this one, 4 gig internal memory, so it's really unique. Okay. Log in. I have to type it correctly. Host SQL. I paste in the same query. Nice SQL editing menu. The script, you see a small difference in there. First of all, they changed the default installation of host setting in 722 to memory caching, which is great. But the template that's used to create a site, both the blank site as well as a new site, there's still file and module caching provided, so you haven't gained much in this case. It's better if everything should be memory caching provider based or clear out.
but you don't use the default template in production.
People start with, I create a blank template. That does people do. And then you get, also for the admin modules, you get also file caching. It can be changed easily. Because I think I created a query to change it for you. And I'm going to change it here. Run. And I'm going to go back to my previous query. Run. Ta-da. Here you see magic appears. Every host setting has changed into a caching provider. Suboptimal. Why? Because I want the host setting to define all of the caching for me and not define it on every page or module level. So I created another query, set it to default, I'll use this one.
Shouldn't be too difficult to integrate it in host settings to ask people when saving, shall we update?
Yeah, everything can be better over time. But this a nice, the SQL has been, okay, I run the query if I've done it correctly. I'll go back to my display and you see there's only one thing left, that is the host setting, and all the other caching settings will look into this one to perform like you specified on the host level. And I like that because I can change from file-based to memory module caching-based provider. I don't like Flash, so I won't install it. Sorry for the SQL module, I don't like cache, I don't install it. Okay. Host setting, well, those are the queries that I've used. You will see memory caching. There's a law. And that law is called the conservation of misery, because I've changed from file-based to memory-based. It will consume more memory, internal memory of the IS server. So there's some kind of trade-off in there. But on real production environment, I think you should not save money on internal memory of both the SQL server as well as the IS server. So please spend some money in there and use memory-based. The Evoke products have additional caching possibilities on a page level. Yeah. Same is true if you make installation packages for modules. Really think about how you want your caching to be done, because it would help to build better production environments.
But be aware that this is module output cache.
Yeah.
There is another cache, because you showed this heavy caching. This is, and you put it in one line, it's a totally different cache because that's a database cache.
Yeah. No, you can cache to the database as well.
Not in the database, but from the database.
Okay.
Objects, there's an object cache for caching the objects being taken from the database.
Okay.
And this heavy caching just means how long they stay in memory.
Okay.
And it's always in memory.
Okay. Performance, you can do a lot about servicing files, especially since DNN sticks up their folder providers, and you can use a content delivery network to service the files for you, which is great, because those requests will not be made to your IS server to somewhere else. Especially useful for static images or bigger files. If you want to do that, just have a look at the folder providers, set up an Amazon S3 account or Azure account for you. It does cost nothing at all, a couple of bucks per month, and then you can service the static files from other locations than just the IS servers.
Yeah, but you need a folder, sort of, you need a folder provider, you have to buy it in community edition.
In the community?
The community, in a platform, there's just since the Yodel, there's three providers, public file in the database, and this encrypted file. And if you want to have it on some clouds, there's one from Avete, which is a folder provider for $60 or something like this.
Including Dropbox and Google Drive and so forth.
Are you using these folder providers?
Yep, for the Evoke environment.
And what are you using? Amazon?
Amazon or Azure. Yeah, depends on what the client wants sometimes. Yeah.
Well?
Yeah. Especially for bigger files like videos and big galleries of photos, it helps, let's say, to decrease the amount of traffic to your IIS web server and get it somewhere else. Yeah.
But you need to set it to public access, not trying to. I'm not sure. Is it possible to put it secure? You have an application. Because if you have a secure, then the request goes back to the DNN.
That's not an SNL, not SSL, but it can be reached only by a access key, secret key that accesses the file location on Azure or Amazon. I'm not going to talk a lot about, let's say, scaling and designing files, but the most drastic performance problems that we have is if users take a picture with their nice 16 megabyte pixel camera, upload it and say it works fine if I do the photograph on my machine, but on the website it is really slow. The program is incorrect, and it becomes more a problem if they have 6 or 10 photos on their website with all 4 or 5 megabyte size.
Do you have a way for stopping people doing that? Because I haven't found a way.
No.
I usually find a 3 megabyte photo like this on the homepage.
I know that.
The picture is small.
Correct. I've been working with WordPress, and WordPress is more content driven, and they have things like Smush It, which will automatically, let's say, resize and compress the images to the size that you want to display. And I think in essentially the red editor should do a thing like that. Okay, save the original photograph or the picture and then create a specific one for that particular environment. But you can talk to Martin where clients complain about the performance of their pages because they have uploaded photographs. Not talking about the fact they take a Word document, Control-C, go to the editor, Control-V for paste, and then are surprised that things look differently. Yeah. That works in my machine. What we do for CSS in JavaScript is if we do module building, we automatically compress those, minify them in the install pack. We mostly create a source pack as well. We do not do the minification in the source pack. You get 2 zip files, one installation of the module and the other source pack installation. For the source pack you get the original CSS and JavaScript. For the installation file we get the minified version.
One point is missing those image sprites you should add to it.
Skin design, sprites, image, thank you. No problem. It's work creating sprites. Probably people know here, this is one big picture, and for CSS you pick elements out that instead of having different pictures. Just small examples, here are 4 or 5 items. If you want to retrieve them, 10 HTTP requests, total size 245K. If you make a sprite like this, it's just one request and 13K. So it helps.
There's an IIS extension where you can automatically do it for all files in a folder. I'm not sure whether there's already some DNN integration to it, but that would be nice.
Remember, doing sprites is work, and the designers here in the room probably know that doing sprites is additional work. Taking an image file, an image, and put it somewhere is easier than figuring out. There's some tools available, I think, to combine images and generate the CSS files for you, so you can take parts of it. But it's still additional work, so it is something to be done in the end of design. It helps if you have a lot of images like this, to create just one image and pick out. Some small things about the IS server. Please use a recent one, 2008 or higher, 16-bit, available memory at least four. Use IS 7 or higher. Recycle at an exact time for the application pool, so it's not middle of the day recycling, but for example 2 o'clock in the night. And if you use .NET, please use a ping service that will ping your website every 5 minutes, and that keeps all the DLLs from the .NET environment into memory. Otherwise, IS will flush it after 10, 15, 20 minutes, depending what you've set. It will flush all the DLLs out of memory.
If you recycle at an exact time, then pinging is not necessary.
But you can combine it if you have a public service. It can inform you that your site is down, so you get the additional benefit.
There are several ping services available at the end. I think I've made a list of them. Some of them are free, some of them have to pay. But the ping service we use in production environment will help you to get an email or an SMS if sites are offline. Keep alive services, a number of examples: host tracker, uptime robot, status cake, and probably more around. They have all free options for a limited number of websites. You can specify at what frequency the ping has to be executed. And most of these services also build a history log file, which is nice if you want to specify to the end user that your site has been up and running 99.95% of the time.
Can I suggest also Pingdom and Pingdom?
Yeah.
And the new Relic.
Okay.
On the last version, 8.5 have a great announcement around you can now set the process, the W3 process, not to terminate, but to suspend mode.
Okay.
When you haven't to restart.
Okay.
They have optimism.
Okay, new announcement, please send it. Pingdom is also a great service. It tells you everything about your website.
The Relic is very advanced. It's actually an agent that runs on a server. So it does the pinging, that's the basics of the thing, but it also gives you complete information about the performance of your site. So it gives
great.
Very detailed information.
Can you send me an email with the info? I include it next time. Some examples, host tracker will leave it out. Internet information service, specify the default document. The default is index.html, I think, HTML, and the default.asp is number 5 in a row. Why not move it up to the top? It saves on testing. You can use dynamic compression and dynamic content caching on IIS. Default is off, and I think if you install IIS by default, it's not available. It's an add-on you have to install for you. And again, it will take some resources for the IIS server, but it will compress the output that is sent to the end user, especially useful if you have lots of HTML in there. It will compress finely in there. That was previously in DNN itself called gzip compression, somewhere in the host settings. It's moved out. And the IIS does, I think, does it better. There's something like debug is false in the web.config and put the server in release mode. You can specify direct retail. It will also make IIS say, okay, I'm not going to debug anything. Here I want to have an environment that is optimized for production environment.
So what is that flash setting? I don't know what is that about this?
This? Retail is no. I have to find it back again. I found it. It has something to do with a number of items there that means not going to debug anywhere for any site that is running on your IIS. So it's a system setting for IIS.
I think it would be forbid going to debug mode. So if you put debug mode in the web platform, it will just ignore it.
Yeah. So this will do it for the whole IIS server for production. Seeing the time, I will skip. SQL Server, number of items in here. Also use a real IIS server, real SQL Server, 2008-2012. If you want to have memory in the server, use at least 4, 8 or 12 gigabyte. More memory is better. SCSI disks with RAID configuration or SSD, and SSD for system disks. They're reliable nowadays.
Just a recommendation from my experience, if you use a newer version, it performs better, especially I noticed that Windows Windows, but SQL Server 2012 performs much better if you're using with some constructs like table expression. So
Okay.
it makes sense to use a newer version.
Newer version. Costs you some money, but you get better in return.
Do you run your SQL server on a separate server?
No, for most of the time currently we have one server with 16 gigabyte of memory, and we have some memory reserved for SQL Server and some memory reserved for IS and some memory reserved for. Previously was the idea that you shifted over different servers, but I haven't noticed that much difference. It might be if you want to create a web farm that you do it differently, but for the environment that we work on, we mostly have all it on one machine.
If you're out of resources, of course, that's one the cheaper option to separate two servers, one for SQL database, one for the web server,
Yeah.
instead of trying to start with a farm, having both on
Right.
machines. That doesn't work.
But please don't use SQL Express versions. No, never. Yesterday I talked to somebody who had one, it became a client of us, it was a client of another one, an agency, an advertisement agency who ran 100 websites with one IS on one SQL Express 2000. That doesn't work. And they reached the problem because the size of the SQL database grew above the limit of SQL Express at that time. I thought it was 2 gigabytes or something. And they charged, I think, €250 per month per website for hosting. So they're making a lot of money.
Why aren't we all doing this?
Well, you have to have somebody in client contact who can talk to customers and have a real soft face. Yeah.
Look, at what point is SQL Express 24?
Yeah. I'm putting this here for real. It does work, of course. But if you have a real, let's say, a database size of 2, 3, 4, 5 gigabyte, it will run. But on the longer run, the quality of your application will be better if you use real SQL Server instead of SQL Express. I don't think there's a fixed limit to say you have to do this after this particular limit.
And what version are you recommending? Web edition or standard or?
For web edition, it's okay. I think in the Netherlands, if you want to host it web edition, it's about 30 or 40 euro per month, which is reasonable. And you can run multiple sites, and if you charge anyone 40 or 50 euro for hosting, you will get by. Yeah.
Yeah, the differences are, in fact, how SQL Server Express and web server is mainly the same. Only Express is just limited to one processor with up to 4 cores,
yeah,
and maximum of 1 gigabyte of memory being used. The database maybe up to 16 gigabyte in the later versions, but so for most of the small and medium size, that's fine. But of course not for a hosting business and not for large websites. But I think you can say that for never use it.
I will go for the best, and I use a real SQL Server. But on the other hand, if you're really tight on money, SQL Express will work.
But you won't have some tools like the profiler, and that can be a problem.
Yeah. Sebastian created a script called Turbo SQL, a set of SQL scripts to improve the performance. Sebastian spent a lot of time analyzing what the DNN tables and queries and stored procedures and views do, and he created a big script to improve the quality of database access. A warning, at least that's what Sebastian always tells, uninstall this particular change before you upgrade, because he has to look very carefully what has changed in the database. You have to check the version that you're using with the versus the DNN version, because he has been very keen on the things in there. The disadvantage of it is an all or nothing principle. He has looked very carefully, changed a lot in the quality of accessing the database, but it can make a real change, a real difference in performance. Sometimes 30–40% if you have some type of installation.
The situation, it really will work well if you have large numbers of objects of a specific type, especially users and folders.
Yeah.
Those are very slow. If you have large numbers in a website, and DNN is not performing very well.
It's an all or nothing.
There are two parts of it.
Okay. Do nothing. Do not optimize at the workloads. Do SQL priority. Remove common runtime in the SQL database. If you want to do backup, do compressed backup, that saves you some time. And really have some maintenance plans in your SQL environment. I'm not surprised if you come to clients who have a form a database of competitors or websites that there are no maintenance plans whatsoever. Have a daily maintenance plan for backup if you want to, and a weekly maintenance plan for indexing, statistics, re-indexing and so forth. Will not change the demo. Database, auto close off, auto shrink off, recovery model to simple, not everything has to be logged, just simple. Log the file on a separate volume, grow the database by size and not by percentage, but because percentage will grow very quickly. Keep some free space in the database and do not shrink too often, but do not try to minimize it, let SQL do the most of the jobs. If it was SQL 2000 that would specify it more, but SQL 2005 and up are really keen on reusing space in the database. And log on a separate volume and use an SRD for that. One of the changes you will find it in the configuration elements, database options, troublesome database content.
One option you missed, one very important one, that is set compatibility level to maximum.
Yeah.
That's really key. If you have a whole site which grew over several DNN installations, you will have maybe compatibility of 2000 or 2005. Even between 2008 and 2012, the performance will definitely change because it uses new options to optimize for especially like this computer table structure. It's very important.
You have troublesome databases, overflowing search tables, overflowing site log tables, and overflowing event log tables. Never purged whatsoever. I've made a small query that will show you the size of the particular tables in your database. You will find it in the hosting as well. In general, spend some money on serious hardware. There's no substitute for cubic inches. Hard to find problems. That's what Sebastian talked about. Large number of portals, large number of modules, large number of roles, large number of users. Those are edge cases where the default SQL database access is not optimal. Hard to find thing, SQL, auto-join constructs. Now, Sebastian knows everything about that. And what we also found sometimes from converting database is, for example, the collation sequences difference from, the collation sequence difference. So we have a Latin American versus a Western European 805 collation sequence. And if you have to do joins, and sometimes you have to, SQL Server have to load complete tables into memory in order to do the joins for you. And I've covered all of it in this way. You'll find the presentation later on. Aim, please remember, try to aim it above 80. Use Google PageSpeed to find it for you. 78 is good as well, but try to aim above 80. Remember the 10-90 rule, so the last 10% will cost you 90% of your energy and money. So be satisfied if you're 80 or 85. And remember the law of conservation of misery. And that's it. Some resources you will find, things to retrieve. And that's it for today.